All right. Well, hello and happy spring if you are in the Northern Hemisphere. It is March the 21st, 2023, and we're back together for another community call. Today I'm with Kathy Vaughn, our team lead for team coaching. And Kathy, really looking forward to sitting down with you to talk very broadly on air quote 90 days and 90 ways of team coaching, which for those that follow my writing, you might have heard me say that I'm working on a manuscript right now, working title 90 Days and 90 Ways to Coach Teams, because there is just such a variety. So as we step into spring, Kathy, what are you excited about as it relates to team coaching?
So that's a great starting point, Jennifer, because I feel that the shift that's happened over the last maybe year and a half, and you precede that with your work and our work together, is the focus on moving away from the doing of the team to the being of the team. And I was just on a call today with a lot of colleagues in Europe talking about climate change coaching and systemic team coaching. And not to get into that here, but it's all about what's the team being together, and then assuming that the ways of being precede and actually inform the ways of doing. And we've been doing that in our own team coaching essentials program. It's a big part of how we focus and differentiating team coaching versus other team modalities. And it's a really useful conversation to have almost 3 months into 2023.
Absolutely. I think, really issues today require that collective focus. This year is 10 years since the publication of From One to Many Best Practices for Team Group Coaching,
Yeah.
where I said very explicitly, like to really affect large scale change, we need to harness the power of many, whether it's a group or a team. And I think climate change is a really interesting one, right? Like yesterday was also the publication of the latest UN climate initiative. Some of you know, but maybe don't know, that I used to sit on a GEF, on a global environment facility, when I worked for the UN.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my role involves supporting 10 governments on both climate change and biodiversity. So there are two separate agreements on a global level. And, sadly, we haven't made a lot of progress since I was a grad student in 1992, 93, teaching climate change here in Canada. My son now is actually getting ready to start university in the fall as a undergrad in environmental studies, climate science, and urban planning, to really look at that nexus of what is needed. So whether we look at it on a macro level, back at home, we all play a part. And I think that is a very real issue of teams today, whether they're working on climate or just, like generating profitability for an organization, teams are the engine of business as well. So excited.
So true, Jennifer. Absolutely. That you can, it's no, as much as we still focus on the computer, it really is becoming much more about what is the team doing, and then how do those individual contributors contribute to some of the larger values of the organization. And that's best practice.
So if you've been following Kathy and I think it's almost been 9 months since we started down this path, maybe even closer to a year, where we've done, for those of you that are team coaches or want to be team coaches, really, some of the related areas to today's call. You might want to check out our other team coaching and focus calls. We've also done coaching calls related to coaching supervision for team coaches. We've talked a lot about our new pathway for learning towards our internal certificate in team coaching. So we have 70 and 125-hour team coaching training pathways. And that both of those lead to the new ACTC, the new Advanced Credential in Team Coaching. So a lot on the go. Maybe this is the first video you found, or maybe you're just following all of them. So we hope that this will provide just an even more important layer. I think today's focus is more from the practitioner's lens. What do you do? Like, what do you do when you get in front of a team? And that's where, in my next set of writing, which will come out probably late 23, early 24, working title and copyrighted already because I've published it, 90 Days and 90 Ways of Team Coaching. Because what I love as a team coach myself, and this is taking, over the span of several decades now, every conversation is different, right? There are so many different ways that we can be supporting teams into their action, into their awareness, into their results and their relationships. And that's what I really want to just touch on today. So let me ask you, Kathy, you've been doing team coaching for a while as well. Like, what do you get excited about as it relates to this field from a practitioner's lens?
So you just pointed out those four categories that ICF looks at when they talk about the awareness of the industry, right? What coaching is. And for me, the awareness of the importance of the being of the team versus the doing of the team is where I get most excited, right? Where a team, whether it's the leader, an individual says, oh, we hadn't really thought about that. Even a high performing team, right? You and I both know, and I know you spoke about this in your recent TED talk, that the change is so current, it's happening so fast in so many of our teams that even the best laid plans, something will change. So it's that ability to come together as a collective in a point in time with the best wisdom and then look forward and say, what do we need? And not to tie it to individuals as much as possible, but to tie it to behaviors and understandings. And then accept that those understandings may need to be renegotiated as people join the team, leave the team. And leadership also plays a role, but to cast that as this is, once you have a good team, how do you keep it going? It's not about just the individuals, it's about how they come together. And there's no one way to do it. It's 90 days and 90 ways, right? A team mission, a team objective, team membership could completely change in 90 days.
And that is
One
today's
quarter of a
right?
financial year.
Yeah. The change factor. And I think back to, I was sharing this with a group earlier today, a group of team coaches. And I was saying, I remember so vividly when I was just starting to write from one to many, 10, more than like this would be 11 years ago. And my executive editor at the time showed up to one of our lunchtime meetings, and he always brought me like a gift of a book, right? Like a new book. And it was interesting because he puts this book down on the table. And he says, I think you need to read this book, Jennifer, as you're writing from one to many. And it was Amy Edmonston's teaming book. And I really was like, Amy was so ahead of her time in terms of really being able to name what was happening in a lot of extreme teams. As I've read her work and really appreciate like her book on extreme teaming, that really took me back to my years as a leader in teams that changed, you know, formally every 3 months, right? Like, how do
Yep.
you become a high performing team in such an intense time frame? And there really is a science behind it. So we're going to touch on a little bit of that today in today's call. Like, this is a pretty organic call, but we've also wanted to update you because maybe this is the first time you're meeting us. Here at Potentials Realize, we're continuing to offer programming, especially CCE approved programming for coaches. March is a busy month. We know many of you are just coming off of March break. I was on March break last week. A lot of our American colleagues are on March break this week. Some of you stretch that into Easter, which is early April. But we've got a variety of different training programs happening. This morning, we kicked off coaching diverse teams and groups with work styles. One of my favorites, and Kathy's joined me on that in the past. It is a really fun look at how do we support teams today with varying diversity, varying styles, especially in the hybrid world. And you might be noticing that it's not just hybrid that people are talking about, it's also about bringing us back to the matrix. And so some of you may want to dive back into our archives because I'm really fascinated. A lot of 2 team engagements coming up in the next few weeks here in the Toronto area. They are really leaving the wording of hybrid aside and talking matrices. And matrix management, I keep saying remote is complex. Hybrid is even more complex. And matrix is yet another derivative of complexity. So if you're really looking to equip yourself with like tools in today's workspace, not 5 years ago, not 2 years ago, this is what we do at Potentials Realized. Really look at this continuing evolving workspace. And we will have a spring group of the Reconnecting Workspaces Certified Coach training, which really gives you access to 24 tools that you can be sharing and using with license with your clients, whether they're one-on-one, group, or team. So lots on the,
Jennifer,
yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to say, I think it's important for you to share with colleagues um, the research that you've done, your two assessments that lead into activate your group and team coaching superpowers of also coaching diverse teams.
Yes, thank you. So many of you are aware of the two quizzes that we've done. The first one I published was August of 2021. That's the hybrid work styles quiz. I actually have the link coming up. And that is to help us really get better at understanding and helping teams understand who they are. As I say in my most recent TED Talk, which was just launched about 10 days ago, you can look it up online. It is called Coaching Teams Through Chaos. And in it, I share probably something you've heard me say a dozen times, which is diversity equals strength, right? We know that the most diverse teams are usually the most high performing because they bring that 360 vantage point of skills, of approaches, of vantage points. And yet it's the hardest to work across differences. So how do we do that? And that is where coaching diverse teams and groups really zooms into the hybrid work styles. And it is available. You can take that online. You can also join us for this new CCE program. And Kathy's put it into chat. There's a long link, and I've got a shorter link as well. But if you want to just note the long link in our chat. Now, that's wonderful to focus at our clients. And what I've noticed as a coach trainer for almost 2 decades now is that coaches love to explore their self terrain. And I've really been fascinated in working with thousands of group and team coaches through infancy to maturity, I would say, over the last 2 decades in seeing how our range as coaches becomes even more important. And that led me to create this past summer the Group and Team Coaching Superpowers Quiz. And that is available. I'll give you the link right now because I know this one out of the top of my head. That is bit.ly/GT Coaching Superpower. So again, bit.ly/GT Coaching Superpower. There is no S on superpowers. It's just superpower. And I would invite you, if you're really curious about looking at yourself, your presence, who you are, what you can use with self as instrument, check out the Team and Group Coaching Superpower Quiz. I now have a 6-week program associated with this, 14 CCEs, and that is called Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpowers. It's really a fun dive of self-exploration, learning in a small group context. We're actually kicking off again this Friday, March 24th at 10:15 a.m. for the next 6 weeks. Now, Kathy, what do you like about these two quizzes? You've taken them as a practitioner.
Yeah. So what I really appreciated, the most recent one I took was the course was the Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpowers. And what I appreciated is that the quiz and most importantly, the material allowed us to match, right? To see what was it about our teams that also spoke to or challenged us in our own personal style. And then to have us think through if our personal preference as a coach is 1, 2, 3, what does that mean when we're trying to work with another co-coach, which is best practice, as you know, but also to think about in your matrix, you had not a matrix, but you had a full worksheet, right, for us to think through and like a journey map. Really having us practice and think through one by one each of the different styles and what was showing up for us. And I thought that was really powerful. Of course, the value of small group dialogue and experiential is just, paramount to none.
Yeah. And that's where we learn, right? We learn through action, and both Activate, as we call it in short form, which is the one about you and your superpowers, as well as coaching diverse teams with the work styles. Both of those provide you with a mini practicum component, I like to say. Each coach is actually asked to lead part of a call so that we can see your style in action. It also provides you with that opportunity to stretch and get feedback and see other styles at play. And that's where I think continued growth as coaches really happens, because we may not do, a year full of learning unless we want to, but how do we continue keeping our skills sharp? So Kathy, I think, has put into chat the long link for Reconnecting. So both of these are over at
Activate.
reconnectingworkspaces.com. And that second one is Activate. So let's get into the heart of this. And really, this next writing for me has been influenced over, I want to put it over the last 7 years. Some of you know that Reconnecting Workspaces was a book that took 5 years to come to fruition. I started writing it on a flight November 1st, 2017, where I was being asked to go fly from Toronto to New York to deliver a wonderful keynote over Times Square for an hour. And I thought, isn't this interesting? Right? It's I could probably do this virtually, but they wanted me physically in person. And in that meeting, we had people in London, New York, Montreal. We had Chicago in the room virtually, and me physically in Times Square with a few handful of the New York office team. I continue to really be an advocate for better hybrid work. Hybrid remote has never meant that we don't see each other. It means that we see each other strategically. And that has really informed Reconnecting Workspaces, Pathways to Thrive in the Virtual Remote Hybrid World. And my second book that also came out 2 years ago called The 90-Day Guide for Success. 90-Day Guide for Success really is an onboarding or reboarding resource. It's a workbook. It is literally takes a look at 90 different topics that are of relevant in today's world. So this was the original way to look at it, right? Like very dry, monthly. You might work with a client one-on-one, group or team, through a 90-day lens. And then Kathy was actually the inspiration for the newer version, which is this. Ta-da! Kathy and I were sitting down one day and she's like, what if it was more like an elements table? And I was like, ooh, that's such a great idea. And so I turned to one of our designers who does his magic, and what has become, I think, very much like a multicolored, layered potpourri of options. So 90-Day Guide was written with 90 days of adventures to really start exploring. In this format, a coach can now sit down with literally a table map and say, hey, what's really relevant for you today? Because we know we don't live in a linear world. Certainly not my world is linear. I don't know about yours, Kathy, but I do live in this world of chaos that I seem to have invoked since December 1st and my TED Talk, which is coaching teams through chaos. And, a lot of the teams, groups, and individuals that I'm working with are having to jump around professionally. One day it's about thinking about the skill of influence. The next day, oh, I'm being asked to coach a peer. Then the next day, it's about delegation. And the fourth day, it might actually be about conflict management. So 90-Day Guide has been informed by 3 decades of work. In my former world of work with the UN and international organizations, a large part of my work through the 90s was actually building teams. So it was going from initial recruitment and job design through to interviewing, so selection, as we would call it, recruitment, selection, and then onboarding, whether onboarding started in a person's country of birth or country of work, whether they were staying in that same country or moving around the world. And so I've been really fascinated and involved heavily in different projects to look at what constitutes success, especially in these first 90 days, whether it's one-on-one or in a team context. Because again, I said the teams that I led for many years were on 90-day projects. We came together, we formed, we stormed, we normed, and then we had to get to performing ASAP, as fast as possible, within a few days. Like literally, we had to compress those time windows of the storming stage. And as you know, Tuckman's model, the model of team and group development, is not a straight staircase. You might go up, but you come down and you go back up again. And as we went through those many adventures, a lot of these 90 different themes emerged for myself as a leader, emerged for the entire team. Because what we know, of course, through the pandemic, the world knows this now, remote work equals autonomy. Hybrid work requires that everyone has skills. Really, we need to equip everyone with skills and the requisite authority and responsibility to affect change. Otherwise, we do see what is happening now in so many organizations where people are exhausted. So I thought for today, like we've done in the past, but it would be really interesting for Kathy and I to maybe sit down and pick a few of these. And then, as I said, I'm working on this new book now, the 90-day guide. I'll pull some of those topics so that you can see what's in here. But then I'll talk a little bit about this next book, which is the team coaching resource for 90 ways and 90 days to work with teams. So really taking it one layer down, 90-day guide for the remote worker themselves. But now the 90 days and 90 ways is for you as practitioner. What might you do? How might you stimulate the conversation? So, Kathy, let me pause here. And what are you?
That's, well, I just love all those gems, and I just love, just always how you're always looking at what's coming up. So what I'm hearing in the space is, if we recognize that teams are the vehicle to deliver the work, right? It's also accepting that it's not the best worker all the time, like the most intelligent with the most knowledge. It's what happens when everyone comes together, and there's no perfect fix. There's no perfect. You can design a team, but in reality, many of us cannot.
Yeah.
Right? We get who we get. So how do you maximize what's coming to the table?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's a regular conversation for team leaders, supporting the team leaders is important, but also for the team. I mean, you mentioned the UN, and we know that that's an environment where sometimes people rotate on a regular basis every 2-3 years. Like, that's just how it is. How do you keep a well functioning team continuing? Um, where you have more structured rotations, or less structured rotations, rather, it's more uh, based on other things. There's other realities to pay attention to. So how do we keep things moving? How do you allow people to step up? And we haven't even talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some of the other, global movements that are going around. The, the individual contributor, as important as that is in terms of talent acquisition, I think it's really the collective contributor where the American expression. And for teams, it's building the capacity to accept, accelerate, discuss, and engage in what do we need to do right now. And like, what do we have to do right now? What is our, you know, absolutely must achieve, and what's the nice to haves?
Yeah.
And knowing that it will not be long term, because that's in many of our industries, that's not the reality. It's 18 months and we're on to something new.
Even 18 weeks, right? Like sometimes it's really we're down to 6 months, we're down to 3 month windows, 18 days. Like it really, you look at
Yeah.
what's happening in financial services right now. It's
Oh my
like
gosh. Yeah.
ongoing iteration. And like, will this be the last disruption? No, this is exactly what my latest TED talk is about. Chaos, chaos. And as my grad supervisor said to me 3 decades ago, Jen, as you embark on a global career, just be ready to embrace the chaos. Don't try to fight it, just embrace it. And, you know, 2023, words of wisdom still hold true because how do we lead? How do we thrive in ever changing environments? That truly is, I think, my collective capsule of this latest body of work is how do we just help people not just even survive, but enjoy, like start to enjoy and build the capacity that, what, maybe this is the way things are going to be. And so I think a lot of people have realized, like it's never going to be a flip of the switch and we're back to where we were. No, like things will continue to change in many instances, not every instance, but many instances.
And I
So I,
love what you just said, build the joy, right? So as much as this is maybe not what we grew up thinking about, right? It wasn't what our parents told us or what we trained for, but if we accept that change is just part of the life, right? Both planned change and that will what just happens, how to create a mindset. And that's what team coaches can help a team do, and is think about the mindset of what does that look like.
You got it. You
And,
know, it
and you,
is.
your team, and I really want to encourage people to listen to your TED talk because you talk about the, having those different members of the team, and we can't get into that here, but really, you know, looking at who to activate, who to leverage as you're going through all this change. This is super important, and there's no one way to do it. Actually, every team's on its own journey, but there is a set of principles that will help the team do it better, and coaches who are trained in team coaching can support the team to do it even better.
Very well said. So if you want to hear and view the latest TED Talk, by all means, scan the QR code. It's called Coaching Teams Through Chaos. I delivered it here in Toronto to a live audience, which was really interesting, December 1st. So to me, even as a speaker, it's so interesting to compare the live audience with my first TED Talk, which was me talking to a virtual audience. You can decide which one you like, but I think many of you will appreciate this one at a very different level. That's sort of the initial reaction I've been getting in the last few days of sharing this with the world. And, as Kathy has just said, teams exist for many reasons, but one of the key issues today is how do we harness our diverse talents, our diverse insights, our different ways of seeing and being and believing in the world? Because many teams today are cross-cultural. And I think, this is an area, especially in the coaching world, we really are not getting our head into this. I was part of a conversation a few weeks ago, and as one of the solo Canadians, I realized my mindset, back to mindset, my mindset was so different. It was because of my socialization, apart my global work, that the way a discussion was going on, what was multi-layered from our cultural lenses, and it was something that was in the space but not brought to the space. And this happens all the time, right, in meetings that we're at. So there's a lot of different layers. One of the things that I hope you'll appreciate with the latest TED Talk, Coaching Teams Through Chaos, is sort of a maturity of the frameworks that I've been sharing with you for some years now. So back in 2017, I first published the 6 Factors of High Performing Teams in Effective Virtual Conversations. It shows up again in chapter 4 of Reconnecting Workspaces. But in the TED Talk, I now layer it in with who on your team can be the steward or the advocate for these different ingredients that we know teams need in any instance, whether they're back in the office, whether they are working all remote because you've decided to become a virtual organization, or whether you're working hybrid or even matrix. Because with complexity comes the need to return back to the basics. And so this is where strong invitation to find out, first of all, what's your hybrid working style? Or what is the hybrid working style of the people you support? Those working styles can also match and do match to the different 6 factors that we know teams need. And earlier today, as we were going through the Coaching Diverse Teams and Groups program, we had a discussion. Someone said, well, this is really interesting, right? Because what if you have a team that is all one type, like maybe all builders? And what we found in the last couple of years doing work with teams like HR, 80% of people might be builders. That's great at getting things done. But what about slowing things down? What about working with the relational piece of the work? And that's where we do need the other colors. So I'm not going to get into the whole layers of this work. You can watch the TED Talk for more on this. But it is, I think, really important that we start stimulating the conversation to really help teams understand who are they in their totality, what is needed now in this moment, which might be different than what was needed 2 weeks ago, and what are they working towards, right? We still need a mission and a vision to be aiming towards, even if things change, and we know that things will change. So this
Yeah.
frame is going to link in then with the 90 days. What do you want to say, Kathy, on this piece?
So I think you've really set it up nicely to things are complex, things are constantly going to change. So how do you give yourself the balance that you need as a leader, as a team member? And there's no perfect answer, but there are principles to guide. And if you do exploration inquiry through those principles, you get information, you get buy-in. And we know that through your triad of connection, trust, and safety, which is another principle of your work, that things will change, but what people need is predictability. When things are very, very challenging, people need predictability. So the more a team can start those conversations before things get really chaotic, the more people understand here's what's going to happen and they can adjust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so team coaching is a perfect way to support a team, whether it's a high performing team or not, to have those conversations and to own it. Because at the end of the day, Jennifer will agree that as much as we love team coaching, our aim is to put us out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
It's to set the team on its way and make it sustainable. If we come back to the team, we want it to be a new challenge. We don't want to come back for the same challenge.
And I think that last point really deserves a spotlight, right? This is an area of challenge for coaches and clients alike, right? Because it really talks to accountability and ownership. Who owns the process? As as a team builder, I'm coming in and I'm doing something for the team, versus as a team coach, we're really co-creating, and the ownership is much, much, much less with the coach because we're coming in and out of the system. It's very much about the team ownership and lasering in. My eyes throughout showing this has been drawn to the shared commitment. The now what? Now, what are you going to do? Now, how do you have each other's backs? Because as a team coach, there's a privilege that I bring of coming and going out of the system. I can leave the mess. I can leave the chaos of the system that teams operate within. And that is a privilege. And at the same time, our role is to really help the team find the resources necessary so they can, whether it's solve an issue or find creative solutions for what they're facing every moment. Because even if we're meeting a team once a week, every other week, once a month, those time lapse moments can be huge. And you might think, oh, nothing's going to happen in a week. You know what? In a week of a life of a team, a lot can happen. And so, how are we helping the team resource itself again? And how are we helping ourselves resource each other? We've spent a lot of time, you and I, Kathy, talking about supervision. And I think this is where there is a really interesting intersect as well with some of the supervision principles around resourcing. That team coaches really do want to be growing for their own practice and in osmosis, perhaps, or directly in support of teams, because teams cannot continue to run at breakneck speed. We know that teams need renewal cycles, or else you will face the endemic nature of burnout, which is happening everywhere. So it's a fascinating time. And what I'm conscious of is, like, we haven't really gotten into the practices, right? The practices that are going to help are different styles, and I'm not going to get into their names, but chances are you're going to be dipping into a lot of these different areas. And I'm just going to magnify this. We're going to wind up this call in a minute or two, but I just want people to sort of take a look at a line, one line. You can pick any line. But my guess is, on that one line that you've chosen, you're probably saying, oh yeah, I could benefit from getting some tools around vision, or, oh hey, yeah, building trust. I heard that the team doesn't know how to build trust. What about relationships? Have we really talked about managing up lately? Or, oh wow, navigating VUCA. And I'm just looking at that one line, right? That is the second line, first real line. There's so many of these topics that we are called upon to stimulate conversations around. And truly, that was the reason why I wrote the 90-day guide, because I found in each one of these days, there was a tool or a resource I'd already developed and was using with clients. A lot of these were one-on-one, but some of them were also team. So this new resource coming out later this year early 2024 will be 2024 will be really specifically for teams because it's a different conversation. What are your thoughts right now,
I
Kathy?
can't disagree with you more. And I think it even, I mean, we're talking about teams, team coaching, because that's what we do. Well, we do coaching here at Potentials Realized. I mean, that's what our focus, but it just speaks so much more to the larger conversation of how to prepare people to manage and lead teams, how to prepare people to be part of teams, to work across. You mentioned cultural differences, but let's say age differences, you know, generational differences. Even in our own team, we've noted the differences between having colleagues like yourself in Canada, someone in Europe, someone like myself in a different time zone, and just the differences like of how not just the time differences, but I think also just stylistically. Um, our lived experiences come to bear as we have those conversations, whether we're talking about a casino, working in Guyana, working as a tour guide, working for the UN, they all make a difference and they're part of who we are and what we bring to the table. And it's how to maximize that in a point of time where it's mostly positive. That is what we're trying to do. And team coaching offers such opportunity for people to sit and explore that and to give trust that the team coach is there to partner with them on their agenda and to work towards what they need to work towards. You'll know this phrase that I always say, what's the conversation that a team can only have together that they need to have now?
So I think that's a great place to wrap it up because lots of different offshoots, right? If anything, today was probably sparking 90 new ideas for you. And that's what we wanted to do. Wet your whistle. Definitely check out the TED Talk, Coaching Teams Through Chaos. If you're connected with me on LinkedIn, I've already posted it there. Definitely comment, like, share. I often, even with my first one, virtual remote hybrid checklist, I constantly get requests like, can I share this with my team? And yes, this is why I do TED Talks, because I know that as a team leader, you're not going to go out and create a framework. This is why I write. This is why I do what I do. Share this via YouTube, via the TED site with your team. Have a conversation around it. If you're interested in learning more because you're a team that's looking at this, reach out to us. This is why we're certifying coaches, because we can't do all the work, right? Like teams all over the world needs this work. And part of the mandate of Potentials Realized, I set the bold goal on December 31st, 2019, January 1st, 2020, of serving 5 million remote and other professionals during this decade, right? Little did I know that remote was on the horizon. It is what we did, it is what we do. And, 5 million is actually a goal very much in reach, but we cannot do it alone. We cannot be the only ones taking this work out into the world, which was really the reason why, when this opportunity came up to share this in Toronto last December, really wanted to share it with the world and spark the conversation. So we hope that this has gotten you interested. Always, you can set up a call with us, find out where you are on your learning pathway. Many of you are coming to us now because you're interested in the new advanced credential with team coaching. We've got our 6 and 10 course pathways, of which, coaching teams through chaos links directly into our coaching diverse teams and groups. And if you want to learn more about yourself, think about the superpowers and activating your group and team coaching superpowers. So I think that's it for today. Closing thoughts, Kathy? Anything you want to say from your perspective?
No, I just think it's so timely. And one of the things we explore in Team Coaching Essentials is how team coaching fits in with different team modalities. And I think when people sit and have those conversations and really think through what they're doing as coaches and what they're being asked to do, and then partner with the 90-day guide, they'll become really aware of how best to serve their clients.
So
So we have
lots.
a lot to offer. Our offerings are super exciting, and I know you have them here, and I'll let you close us out. But really excited for what's here to come.
And our dates are forever changing. So, one thing that you'll notice about us is we're a very agile, responsive organization. So, even dates that you see on the screen have already passed. Know that most of our programs start roughly every 6 to 7 weeks. I think that's a fair sort of element. Our supervision group meets once a month, but most programs meet weekly for about 6 to 7 weeks, roughly. The exception to this is, of course, Group Coaching Essentials, which starts monthly. Most, if not all, of our programs now are ICF CCE approved because we do believe that our training is advanced training, right? It is not for the initial coach unless you already do a lot of work with teams and groups already. But it's all CCE approved. And we have some new courses that I just want to flag. Dates are not firmly set in stone yet, but the next course to launch today, we talked about coaching diverse teams and groups. It actually started this morning, and that will run until April at our early morning, 6:45 to 8 a.m. Eastern. Later this week, we're going to be doing an evening offering of Reconnecting Workspaces Certified Coach, a 24 CCE program. And we've also now had a request for a Friday afternoon group. So there will be, no doubt, a mid to late April offering of Reconnecting Workspaces. And if this conversation has sort of turned your crank, if it's gotten you a little excited, let's talk if that's a program for you, because this gives you a book and a body of work to take into organizations. You can use it as is with attribution. You get more than 24 hours of training, and you really get grounding in this and can promote yourself as a coach that is specialized in hybrid work and the evolving workspace. So we have coaches that are taking this into public sector in the US at the federal level, Canada at the federal level. We have coaches working in university settings. We have coaches working in consumer packaged goods. Like, this is everywhere, and really would enjoy finding out what is next for you on your journey. So, with that, thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy, as always, for being here tonight. And any final words from you before we go to wrap up?
No, I just want to, encourage people to really think about what do they need right now. If you're working with teams, if you're working with groups, hybrid workspaces, we're going into quarter 2. You've been with the team out of last year. It's a new world already in 2023, as we've seen the last few weeks. What is going to be in best service of you as a practitioner? We have so many offerings, and I encourage you to really reach out and have a conversation about which offering will best suit your needs right now. Our vibe is all about intimate, dialogue-based, and practical. So reach out and have a conversation with the team. I put in the Team Coaching Essentials Calendly link. Even if you get that and you get whoever you get will be able to answer your questions. So we look forward to having you.
All right. And we are back in a couple of weeks. We've got 2 calls in April set up. We will continue these. April is our anniversary month, so stay tuned for special events. Also, May, we have, as Kathy reminded us this week, of ICW, International Coaching Week, coming up. So stay tuned. There might be some special events for that. We do love our special events and appreciate your support and interest. So share this with a colleague. Again, the collective is important for us as a coaching body as well. So with that, we'll see you at our next community call. Take care and be well. Thanks, Kathy. See you soon.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye.